the economy was in full recession, and any project we bid back in that time was like Christmas, right? The numbers came in really low and we could do all kinds of things. Today, we've got all these prices that are quite a bit higher, and so if you did the project today, you would pay almost double what happened back then. So we're estimating that your cost is somewhere around $773 to $914, depending on how much you put in there for extra. So a big change.
So together, to do the drill more tank and the rehab, and this is a maximum number, to redo the tank, and to build a substantially larger drill more tank, would bring the total cost for those two in at about $1.5 million. It's pretty close to that. Versus, what do we have for a number for a new tank?
A new tank is, that's somewhere between 1.2 and 1.4 million.
Okay,
So they're pretty comparable.
pretty equivalent.
Yeah. And there are things you could do with the existing tank that would be a lot less money, but the question is, do you get the life out of it that you need? How far do you want to take it? Did I hear a question?
I was just gonna say, the grand total for that parks project was $522,000.
Including the pipeline?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's all, so just to get that.
Okay. So that's part of B, the tank side, and then on distribution, alternative B looks at running that new 12-inch transmission main out and then putting some new PRVs on. So it's similar to A, except that you're rehabbing the tank, and in order to make the volume work, you add that well number 8 work. So your range there is $2.4 to $2.8 million to do B. So if you recall, A was 3 to 3.6, this is 2.4 to 2.8 for B. So,
And back up for
Yeah,
just
go ahead.
just a quick second. And the other differentiation between, and I'm not pushing for either project,
sure.
but the other differentiation between rehabbing the existing tank, which we don't own, we only lease, and a new tank that we would own, that's the difference between the two. Plus the additional lifespan.
Yeah.
Okay.
So project C was, okay, what's the bare minimum here? And that really looked at, for the supply side, you're gonna end up doing all of the same things, right? Because you're gonna, alternative C looks at rehabbing the old tank. So you have to retain well 7, 8, and then do the generator upgrades to well number 8. It looks at just rehabbing the tank, and then on the transmission side, it looks at running enough of a pipeline that we can replace. Is that correct? Do I have that right?
That, the last row there is just the piping in the well tank area.
That's right.
Not-
This is a
not the new
smaller amount of
transmission.
piping
Yeah.
versus B.
Just that
So-
leaking, or potentially leaking that line.
Yeah, so B looked at running that fire flow loop, and on C we look at just a little bit of pipeline to replace the lead joint pipe rack. And-
B is just that small amount of piping as well.
Yeah.
And that represents that only a portion of that ductile that is problematic.
Correct. It doesn't replace all
It
of
doesn't
that.
replace
whole
all
pipe.
of that material.
Is that fire flow, is that from the size of the pipe, or is there any place that they could put a tank up there to, I don't know, is it a low area or a high area where the water works, low pressure?
Yeah, so you could improve your fire flow by putting a tank halfway around, but dollar for dollar, you get better bang for the buck with the pipe than you do the tank. Tanks are really expensive right now, so if we could avoid a tank, we'd try to avoid a tank.
Okay.
So that's that C, so that was the minimum, but bear in mind, this is looking at doing the rehab on the existing tank, just like the park did. Project D looks at doing nothing, the cost for C is now about 1.9 to 2.3 million, depending on how much you put in there for contingency. Project D is nothing, so you just keep it as is, and you hope that you can kind of keep limping along, and DEQ doesn't force you to do any more than they have to.
Are these tanks steel or concrete?
You're not going to see, historically, you get a better deal when you do a steel tank, but right now with the price of steel, we're seeing concrete and steel as kind of a push. So you could choose either direction. I like concrete because, especially in the heat of summer, it keeps your water a little bit cooler. And you don't have to recoat it, so there's some benefits there. But they're not cheap. And then, so those were the four that were originally looked at, and Project A was the one that's recommended. So the prices then, if I picked the midline, was about 3.3 million, 2.6 million, and 2.1 million from A to C. Then, as we talked more with the board, one of the ideas that came up was a Project E. So what if you did, what if you rehabbed the existing tank, but you ran a new fire flow line all the way around? You got the benefits of all that without putting a new tank in. And that's doing most of the rest of the work. Because you're keeping the existing tank though, you do have to do that generator at well 8. And the cost for that is about 3.4 to 4 million. So even though it's rehabbing the old tank, by putting the additional pipeline in and generator, you end up actually not gaining any ground. It ends up being around the same cost. So those were all of the alternatives that have been looked at to date.
And updated.
And updated, yeah. And like I say, the numbers have really shot up over the last year and a half. The question is, what's going to happen next year?
And it's worth considering in the context of our discussion that we sort of assume that those costs are rippling through all of the potential projects to some extent. The
Yeah.
degree to which they utilize iron and steel, for example, might bump up, might have a differential effect, but generally speaking, you know, it isn't just one of our projects that's being affected by the cost increases you're talking about, it's all of them.
It's they've all
It's
gone
across
up
the
quite a
board.
bit. And really the big, I talked about steel and concrete, but labor is the really big one here. We've seen labor costs double in the last 2 to 3 years. So it's a great time to be a contractor, not a great time to be building a project.
Did that Ari Hansen, did they get their tank building concrete machine going for overseas? They had one for overseas, and they did it at Spirit Lake East,
Oh, yeah.
that concrete tank. So this is when I was in business, but they did that a lot of years ago,
Yeah.
but they just poured it, you know, but if they ever got that thing going,
Was it just an automated?
yeah, and just put the rebar in at the same time,
Oh, right. Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
yeah.
Yeah. And there are lots of different tank manufacturing methods. There's something called ferrocement, there's that thing. That's not being used though, so I don't know what happened. So what we do have is we've got lots of really cool slip forms now. So you can build a tank without having to do all the form work we're used to, and that saves money.
You drill it 9 inches at a time.
Yeah, just all the way around.
That makes sense.